Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our special guest, Democratic candidate for governor, Walt Maddox. Also, the V-Team takes a look at trade wars. And it's 9 days to the runoffs.
Now look, let's be sensible about this thing. There's money in this for all of us, right? There's enough for you, there's enough for you, and for me, and for you, and there's enough for
Oh, no, my shoes!
Alabama style, baby. Every man and woman for themselves. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hey, guys.
Hello, hello, hello.
Josh, Jonathan.
Hello, this ought to
Hey,
be
I'm
fun.
outnumbered again.
Yeah. Ought to be fun today.
It should be.
It should be.
Don't make me call timeout, guys.
Yeah.
All right?
It'll be good.
We've got to tackle what many feel is a sensitive subject. You know, I feel that we have had to cover the death of Steve Marshall's wife because, one, he brought up a lot of details about her life that frankly astonished lots of people, shocked people that he would even talk about it. And the fact that we have a primary runoff in less than 9 days. And this investigation in Tennessee is ongoing, which we do not really believe it should be. But one of the things that people of Alabama must ask themselves about their Attorney General is about his character, Troy King's character. And Josh, you did a report this week that I think we want to talk about. But one thing I want to say is, Mr. Marshall said that his wife he did not know her whereabouts for 5 months. And I find that as a husband of 30 years, deeply troubling, because my wife goes missing for 5 hours. I am tearing the town apart to find her. I'm not judging Mr. Marshall by that, but I think we have ample cause to ask what happened here.
Right, you know, and I think that's people keep sending me messages telling me we're taking some criticism from people who have never reported a day in their life on anything, and so that's nice. You know, enjoy that, kids. But you know, the other thing is there's a certain format for the way things should take place, you know, in a police investigation. And when you've reported on cops and things that have gone on inside police stations for a number of years, and I have, you know, I'm not specifically a cops reporter now, but I have been in the past, and you know. There's a format that you're accustomed to seeing there, and when something is left off, something as blatant as the gun with which they're saying a suicide was committed, and that was left off the initial police report, which I can't, if you can find me a law enforcement officer who says that that's okay, then I'll send him my way, because I would like to talk to him about how that might happen. And so that's all I was asking the Murfreesboro PD was, why is the gun not on the report here? What's the deal? And from that, it just kind of spun into this whole deal where they're talking about, well, it's not a closed case, we're still investigating, you know, and then we find out that they've told all the neighbors in the place not to talk to anybody, you know, and so it's just, it has this air of, you know, what the hell's going on here, kind of thing, you know, and it's not, people, it's not an indictment of Steve Marshall in any way.
No, it's not. If anything, it's Murfreesboro PD.
Yeah, and you know, and to him talking about the illness and stuff, to say that we're going to put this out and not have this stigma around mental health, and because we're going to talk about it, you know, I think that's in some ways admirable for what he was doing. You know, I don't know that I necessarily agree with some of the things he said and the way he went about it, but you know, I do think that there's some bit of it that's admirable here, but the rest of it, I mean, you know, if you have this sitting there, why are you not asking the questions? And I don't understand why no one should ask questions about this.
Well, I think the fact that, and Jonathan, you work in some law enforcement. We have talked to many, many law enforcement individuals who say that the make, model, and serial number of that weapon should have been on that report. I've had several people in high ranking said they would bring that guy's lieutenant in and say, why is the make, model, and serial number not? And then it has to be run through the national database to determine if it's been involved in a crime and who owns that weapon. I, unfortunately, am cynical enough to feel like somebody is hiding from something from us, not from a criminal standpoint, but from a political standpoint. But you know more about police reports than I do.
Well, I do, and I will say this. In this case, it is very strange that, you know, Marshall would hold a press conference and pretty much declare that his wife committed suicide, and yet when you look at the report, it's an open-ended report, and the police tell you, you know, the report's not done because, well, this case hasn't been closed yet, which normally means A, it's still under investigation, or B, they're still waiting on some autopsy things. However, you're supposed to list these things in a police report, all your evidence, what the scene looks like, the gun, who's the owner of the gun. Now, you can go back and add addendums to police reports before the case is closed, and sometimes even after the case is closed if you find out other information. But in this situation, this should have been a very cut and dry case as far as the evidence and closing this case out. And I can't figure out what's going on except for the fact that there's something that they're hiding. That's all I can think about.
The initial incident report did cite it as suicide. It was stamped when it came back into the office, apparently. But now, since then, it has been declared an ongoing investigation.
That's right.
So that's some of the things that are that's making us curious about what's going on here.
Well, and I have never in my life, and I've lived places where, and I've covered many, many crimes and things, and I have never heard of the police department canvassing the neighborhood to tell them to not talk to anybody about a crime that happened in their community.
That is very strange.
Yeah, and the other thing is why would they do that anyway? If it's a suicide, if you've already put suicide on the police report, like the officers have here, why are you going door to door in the first place? You know, I mean, what?
It's just strange.
Why are you out there talking to the neighbors?
It's like a gag order was. I mean, which it
Yeah.
wasn't, but
Yeah,
you know, that's
it's
how
just-
you act
I
in
mean,
kind of a gag order
it's very
situation.
odd.
It's just a kind of an odd.
And that's why we keep pushing, because there's some inconsistencies
and
here.
again, it is not about Steve Marshall as a husband or Steve Marshall. It is about that Steve Marshall is a candidate. People have a right to know what happened here. And we've only got about a minute, and so I guess we'll just stay on this topic. But the thing to me is that in 9 days, we're going to vote for him for an office. And you know, quite frankly, Susan, Republicans should be concerned that if there's anything out here, that this doesn't end up being another Doug Jones, Roy Moore situation.
And it could, because although it's still under investigation right now, it will eventually be closed. And, you know, I'm concerned at least how it's going to end up closing, whether it's before the runoff or after the runoff.
I almost bet, I'll take your money, it's before the, I'll take a bet it's after the runoff.
Yeah, it's just a weird situation all the way around,
Is.
and you know, and so when you have weird situations like that for reporters, I mean, it's not a good combination.
And that's something you don't let go of, regardless who it is.
We have been criticized for covering this.
Yes.
That does not bother me.
Yeah,
I am
not by people
beholden
who
to the
know this,
news.
so, no.
And, you know, we got one criticism by some radio guy who uses a fake name, and by somebody who used to work for Bob Riley and Mike Hubb. That's like being attacked by the lollipop killer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
I mean, really, what a bunch of little lollipop kids.
And there are people out there who want to know, and as journalists, it is our responsibility to do our job and find out what we can.
Let me say this. Taking one's own life is not something that the family needs to be ashamed of. People with mental health are not to be put in a closet. They're not to be isolated. They're not to be left alone. And this is one of the situations we have here, and people are criticizing us for bringing it up.
Yeah, it's just, No,
It's
but
not.
no one who knows what actually
Anyway,
goes on in this business.
But you know what? Let's take this and make this a
All right.
catalyst for we've got to address mental health
Okay.
in the state of
All right.
Alabama. Let's get it
All right.
done or start getting it done.
Jonathan's going to have a cow. We've gone over. All right, you've been watching the V, or you're still watching the V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Our guest is Walt Maddox. He wants to be your governor.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation. Two-thirds of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Our special guest today is Tuscaloosa Mayor Walt Maddox. He wants to be your governor. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Mayor, a lot of people know you from your campaign. The people in Tuscaloosa know you and have overwhelmingly voted for you in the past. Then there's a great deal of people who don't know you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your family, and then we'll talk about what you want to do for Alabama.
Well, I'm a husband and I'm a father, married to Stephanie Maddox, have 2 children. Eli, he'll be 5 in a few days, and my daughter Taylor just turned 16, so watch out, state of Alabama.
Yeah.
I've been mayor of Tuscaloosa since 2005. I was reelected in 2017 with 89% of the vote, and was really proud. In the primary, we got 91% of the vote in Tuscaloosa County. So certainly the people who've paid my salary for the last 12 and plus years affirmed what we've been doing. Very proud to have led a city that has overcome the Great Recession, overcame the April 27, 2011 tornado, which destroyed 12% of our city. And we did it, by the way, we cash flowed nearly $50 million with never borrowing a dime or raising taxes. So we've done it in a way of a progressive agenda, fiscally conservative, and those results have given me an opportunity now to be the next governor of the state of Alabama.
Well, you know, and we've talked to a lot of folks about you, both Democrat and Republican, and they're curious because you actually have a plan to govern. We haven't seen anybody come out and say, oh, by the way, I've got a plan to govern and I'm going to show you what it is. So
Well,
tell us a little bit about that.
I've always believed in results and not rhetoric. I've never been one who likes these platitudes that are given by politicians. It's really about building a better future. That's why people send you to whether it's the City Hall or to the State House. So we've always outlined during the course of my career how we're going to do things and how we're going to do it better. That's why I'm excited about this campaign, because whether you live in a Republican county or a Democrat county, you know that your health care is not where it needs to be. Whether you live in a blue county or a red county, you know your infrastructure is not where it needs to be. And that's why we're talking about how we're going to rebuild our bridges, how we're going to repave our roads. That's why we're talking about expanding Medicaid to bring back our rural hospital system. That's why we're talking about the Alabama Education Lottery to vastly improve education and provide college scholarships. When you look at the other side, juxtapose what we're talking about versus what the other side's talking about. Mountain oysters and Confederate monuments, and they refuse to engage in a dialogue about what they want to do as governor of this great state. I believe that contrast is going to continue to build as the months roll on as we head towards November.
And that, you bring up an interesting point. Before the show, before the taping, I contacted, earlier that day, I contacted the Kay Ivey campaign, her campaign manager. Brent Buchanan ducked the question, said that, oh, this was for staff to answer. I'm like, but you're the big dog, you know, you're supposed to be able to have these answers. He sent me over to their communications director, who did not even return an email, a text, or a call. And so they will not confirm that they will even sit down on this set, which I've invited Kay Ivey to sit here and you to sit here, and I will sit in the middle. And if she tries to start a fight, or you know, I'm just teasing. You know, she knows how to deal with this type of thing. I mean, Lord, last time I interviewed her, she took after me, so she knows how to handle herself. Why do you think the governor will not sit down with you?
Well, I agree. I believe the governor actually would want to debate. I just don't think the people around her are going to let her.
Right.
And for good reason. They have no plan. They have no vision about building a better future for Alabama, how making sure that the next generation inherits a better Alabama than the one we have today. And so you can understand why they think it's good politics. But let me say something. It makes for bad governing. The fact is the governor's salary is paid for by the people of Alabama. You can't talk about accountability. You can't talk about transparency if you're unwilling to engage into a dialogue about how you're going to govern over the next 4 years. Governor Ivey should care more about the people that she's leading than about simple politics. And certainly if she believes I'm wrong on education, come debate me. If she believes I'm wrong on health care, come debate me. But she's not going to do it because the people around her who are going to continue to tell her that's bad politics. To be a legitimate governor, you have to go engage the people who pay your salary. Governor Ivey doesn't owe anything to me. She owes it to the people of Alabama to come forward and be transparent and accountability in her actions.
And I think that's one of the things that, you know, again, we've looked at. And for us who pay attention to policy, that you've actually come out with a plan. Because at the end of the day, this may be political, but it's the policies that affect people's lives. And I keep reading about yours. They emphasize the lottery as the centerpiece of your campaign, but I've seen like more to that campaign, which you just mentioned, Medicaid, education, all that. But people keep honing in on that one thing. I mean, it's bigger than that, isn't it?
Well, I think it speaks volumes, the fact that they're harping in on our policies, because the other side has no policies. They have no plan to shore up rural health care in Alabama, which, by the way, 89% of our rural hospitals are in the red today. So, Governor Ivey, what's your plan to fix it? I hear crickets. And you know why? Yeah. You're going to continue to hear crickets, because she doesn't owe it to me to give an explanation. What she owes it to is the nearly 5 million Alabamians who depend on health care as part of their overall quality of life. This is why this election is so important. I am 45 years old. My entire life, we have been 47th, 48th, 49th, and 50th in everything that matters. For over 3 decades, Governor Ivey has been in the center of Montgomery, has been a part of every major decision that this state has had. And look at where we are. I'm ready to have that debate about her 30-year-plus record here in Montgomery and what we've accomplished in Tuscaloosa, which is remarkable, being one of the fastest-growing cities in Alabama, being one of the most financially well-managed with the lowest city sales tax of any municipality in Alabama. I'm ready to have that debate. I hope she is.
Well, and I hope she'll take our offer to come here and sit down and have a conversation about what we're doing. We only got about a minute left here. You know, they say that Doug Jones was a phenomenon because there was a bad candidate. You know, I remember the first time I met you and your wife and your children, I asked your wife, how are you going to convince people to vote for you? How are you going to convince Republicans to vote for you?
Well, I actually feel sorry for the other side, because they're going to be running with no ideas, no vision for Alabama's future. And what I'm discovering across the state is that whether you're Republican or Democrat or Independent, you need a governor who's going to lead us into the 21st century. We're good for business in Alabama. We're good for economic development. We're good for infrastructure, because we're trying to address those issues. I believe that gives us the advantage in this election. I actually feel sorry for the other side, because we're going to be coming with ideas, momentum, and energy, and in an election, that can mean a whole lot.
It can, and we wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you, Bill, for
Thank you
having me.
for coming on.
Thank you.
Our special guest today has been Tuscaloosa Mayor Walt Maddox. He wants to be your governor. You're watching The V. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
The Energy Institute of Alabama promotes reliable, affordable, and clean energy to help grow our economy, create high-paying jobs, and build public support for Alabama's energy industry. The Energy Institute of Alabama is the best source of energy industry information and how it affects households across the state, from convenient energy production to alternative fuels to solar power and beyond.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jonathan, as we mentioned before, it's 9 days to the Republican runoff. Will Ainsworth versus Twinkle Kavanaugh. That's the big ticket on the ballot.
That's
right?
the big ticket on the ballot. You know, and we look at the situation. You never think the lieutenant governor is important, but we found out, you know, last year that the lieutenant governor is an important position. You know, Will and Twinkle are fighting it out. Twinkle has got the name. She's been in politics for a long time. You know,
she's an outsider.
She's an outsider. Okay, yeah, that's right. And that's good. Right. And you know, and then you look at Will. Will is somewhat of a newcomer, but he's got a fire behind him that he's just trying to pull through there. I think it's a great race. Will just released a funny commercial that's funny, and Twinkle just released a bombshell ad on Will that I saw yesterday, and I was like, whoa.
Well, and you know, this thing she says where he called Trump a con artist, and you know, there's a lot of people who agree with him, but not in the Republican Party. Yeah. But Susan, that article was first written by Brandon Mosley.
It was, and it came out of during the Rubio campaign.
It came out from Rubio.
From Rubio, and it was, you know, that was something that Rubio was using during the campaign against Trump.
Because it was true.
Well, I mean, you know, listen, I doubt Will ever looked at the thing and went, okay, you know, he was the chair of the Rubio thing.
He was.
Martha Roby looks like she may, you know, she got forgiveness from Trump. I mean, I think all this out-trumping everybody. It's like, Josh, when you had to out Obama. You put your opponent in bed with Obama when they couldn't pick him. You know, they weren't in for Obama.
Yeah, it's basically trying to out-stupid each other. It's basically what it is. Come on. I mean, come on.
No, I like both of them. I like
Will. I like Will much more, but I mean, you know, I like Will because Will has done some things that you can grab a hold to. You know, if you're a regular person in this state, you know, the ethics stuff and trying to do term limits and things like that. These are things that I think normal people kind of gravitate towards. And I mean, Twinkle calling herself the outsider. Kids, just stop.
That was a little much.
Susan, I tell you, Will Ainsworth did one thing that not a single other lawmaker ever did. He stood up in the well.
Yes, he did.
And tell him what he did in the well of the State House.
He told the Speaker, Hubbard, he needed to go. He told him standing in his diocese, you need to go. We need to vote this man out. He was the only person, only one on that House floor that had that kind of nerve.
You remember they said his career's over.
But yeah, everybody was like, well, that's a freshman representative, and he'll always never be more than a freshman. That's what everybody said.
And you know, I hadn't thought about that in a while, but he was the only one, Josh, that would stand up and say,
and that was early on, too.
Go.
And you know, and me saying that I like him probably kills him. But I mean, I'm sorry, Will.
Now if Joey Kennedy will just write something nice about him, he's done.
But I mean, seriously, if you just look, I mean, don't take my word for it or hold it against him, however you want to look at it. Just take a look at the two. That's all you have to do.
Well, I mean, I like Twinkle Kavanaugh. I think either one of them will serve the state well. Susan, I've known them but long.
I've worked with Twinkle. She's great. I've known her for years, and
like her husband a lot.
And I like Will. And I tell you what, Will he's a firebrand. No matter what, I think his name will be resonating, and he'll stick around no matter the outcome. And he's overcome a lot of the negatives. he has hurdled a lot of the negatives from when he started the race, and I'm actually really impressed with some of the things he's done.
It's been an impressive race.
I think this latest attack that he's not Trumpy enough is it's not legit. He's all Trumpy. All of them are Trumpy until they're not.
All Republicans are Trumpy.
They are Trumpy.
All Republicans are Trumpy, and the ones that aren't are outsiders.
I'm guessing that's going to take a real nosedive here pretty soon.
You know, I mean, I know when people come up to me and go, they're Trump Republican, I'm like, okay.
Says you with the big D.
I think it's going to take a big nosedive here pretty soon.
Hey, speaking of things that are diving, Greg,
and this is the reason why they're going to take the big dive.
Greg Canfield, Secretary of Commerce under Governor Kay Ivey, came out this week and said that Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum is hurting Alabama. We are losing investments right now, and it'll probably result in losing jobs, Susan.
Yeah, it will. And anybody who's a business owner understands if you have costs go up in one area, then cost has got to go down in another area. And the easiest way is to take a full-time person and make them part-time, or to figure out a way where you don't need that position anymore, because it's got to go one way or another. You can't keep employment of what it is and then add cost on top of a product and still make a profit.
Well, these European car makers, Japanese car makers, Korean car makers, Jonathan, have been the lifeblood of Alabama for a long time. But you don't think that you think this is temporary?
I think this is temporary. Look, Trump is a negotiator. This is what he does. It's what he's done his whole life. And I believe that this is a negotiation tactic to get things fired up like he does. The one thing anybody can say about President Trump is he fires people up, whether it's good or bad. And Josh can't disagree with me on that. He fires people up.
I just don't understand.
He is firing people up about this, and I believe that before long it will go away and we'll be back to normal.
Why do you believe that he is a good negotiator? What has he done that makes you believe this?
Well, I can tell you one thing he did. What? He won the election as president of the United States,
and
nobody saw it coming. Did you see it coming?
Well, Michael Moore saw it coming.
I mean, come on.
That is true. I mean, that is bad as I dislike that guy. He has some points.
The only thing he's negotiated to this point is the North Korean deal, which seems to be not going swell.
Oh, says MSNBC. Come on.
Well, or the satellite images that show them restarting the nuclear program. But it's the here the problem is everybody knows, every economist knows about tariffs. All right, this isn't a new concept. There's a reason why we haven't been doing this. And this America First attitude might have worked in the 30s and 40s in the economy, in the economic sense here. It might have worked in the 30s and the 40s when we're not this global society and so reliant upon each other for the business that's coming back and forth to everybody's shores here. But the way it's set up now, it's not like a bunch of economists hadn't been looking at this stuff and trying to figure it out, and now he comes rolling in with the tariffs, and it's killing us, man. It's going to kill us.
And Jonathan, 10 seconds to respond.
I absolutely disagree. I think we need to trust what's going on, see where it takes us, and let us lead it into the future. That's what we need to do.
Susan, what happened to the free trade Republicans of the past?
Draw a line in the sand, boys. Draw a line in the sand.
If only he could rip those cars away from their mothers.
I have no idea what that means, but we're going to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us, because we watch them.